in graduate school, I studied the Black-capped chickadee song, and I did some other work down in Panama and dabbled in some different things. But I live in North Carolina now, and when I got here, I realized that all of the study species I'd ever studied in the past, they didn't live where I lived. So I knew I would need to pick up some new species. And mockingbirds were attractive to me because, A, they're very musical, so it kind of blended with my musical interests growing up. B, they were super abundant, super easy for students to collect data. And Elon University is not a wildlife school, so it's not easy to get students who want to put on hip waders and go wade through the muck, slashing, with a machete and going deep into the forest. So I knew I needed to be able to get some city slickers getting some useful data. And a mockingbird is one of the most abundant campus species. It's right on campus. It's at the top of buildings, and it's easy for any dummy to point a microphone at it and start getting data. So A, it was super musical. B, it was easy for Elon students to get data. And C, everybody has this fear. And by everybody, I mean scientists seem to have this fear of mockingbirds that we can't study them. And it's just, it's killed careers. That's the legendary story that I was told.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, because it has.
Really?
I could go through and list some names and tell how their careers.
What I mean, just what about studying it is so bad?
I think a lot of different things, but I think the big thing was that at the time a lot of people started to study mockingbirds. The world of birdsong was fixated on repertoire sizes. So to the very most fundamental thing you can do is quantify how many song types they sing. Well, when you're a mockingbird, you're switching song types every few seconds. And if you start collecting large amounts of song, pretty soon you're in the hundreds of song types. And then you have to catalog all those. And so there was some estimates made of the repertoire size, but all of them were flawed because they all rely on assumptions which are difficult to verify. And at the end, it was just a whole lot of work without a lot of payoff. Well, I've never been able to quantify the repertoire size of the mockingbird as a whole, and I don't care. That's not my goal. So I think the secret is you have to study differently. You have to allow the bird to tell you what you're going to be able to get data on. And if you can't get data on it, you don't study that anymore. So that's been the way that I've been able to succeed with the mockingbird. I knew that I needed to find a species. I would do best if I studied something different than other people, because at Elon University, we're a teaching first school. So I'm never going to be able to compete in research with somebody like at UNC Chapel Hill or at Duke or at NC State. So at Elon, with the mockingbird, I can study something that I'm not really competing with anybody, and I can do it with Elon students, and it suits my interests.
Cool. I mean, so you lean into the career killer, and you find a different way of getting at it. So what did the bird allow you to study? Would you associate the word beauty with the research you've done there?
Sure. So beauty's been one of my more recent interests with the mockingbird. Probably the thing I've focused the most on is the development of vocal mimicry. So every bird has to learn all these. I mean, they're famous for mimicking other species, but where do they learn that? And how does their mimicry change over time? Do they communicate with other species? Which kinds of species do they mimic more than others? Those are some of the research questions that I studied over the last couple of decades. More recently, I've been collaborating with a couple of professionals. I won't say scientists. One of them is a scientist. She's a neuroscientist, Tina Roski. She's in Germany, I believe. And then David Rothenberg is more of a musician or even a philosopher. And he's specifically interested in beauty and whether he came to me and said, I told him, I'm like, well, I heard that whales have this complicated song that's really musical, and it's supposed to be as complicated as a symphony. And he listens to me and nods, and he says, mockingbirds are way more interesting than whales. So he would know. He's I mean, he's studied musically both the whales and the mockingbirds. So he's convinced that mockingbirds are one of the most musical, beautiful songs out there of birdsong. So I'm not convinced, but He's been more
Okay.
exposed.
But you are somehow studying this as an indicator of beauty. I mean, the Mockingbird song, is that how he's conceptualizing this? And
Right. Yeah. The first thing that we published on it was looking at the transitions. So Mockingbird sings
mm,
something like tweet, 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 choo, 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 brr, 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 something like that. So you can hear how
ah,
every second or two there's a transition from one song type to the next. So
ah,
what David got Tina and me thinking about was these transitions. And he was thinking that they were a musical transitions, kind of like a what a composer would call a variation on a theme. And
mm,
by that, it means that you preserve something from one song type to the next, but you tweak one thing. So he called it musical morphing. And the idea is that
mm,
they might take the sound and then drop the pitch or raise the pitch, or that they would stretch the song out or squeeze it in. To give an
mm.
example, it's something like tiu 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 biu biu biu. So you can hear how it's the
Oh,
same kind of sound, but they're just
yeah,
dropping the pitch. And of course, composers do it all the time, like Beethoven, da 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 da, something like that,
yeah,
just dropping the pitch.
yeah, yeah. Extraordinary. Wow. So is there like a quick highlight of what are the implications of this sort of research?
We don't know yet. It was a
Okay.
very
Okay.
descriptive study. It's not looking at the
Yeah,
functional
sure.
angle. It's possible
Right.
that the females find it sexy and that they would be more attractive to songs that include a lot of these musical like transitions. That would be a different
Uh-huh.
study that we have not done yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's switch to talk about your research. Or your teaching rather.
Sure.
You've got a pretty popular course on the journey through time. Could you talk us through what that's about?
Journey Through Time. Yes, it's a course for non-science majors, but it's an interdisciplinary science course. And I've always been fascinated by big stuff, Brandon. I've always thought that I want to look at big things, the universe. Look at not
Uh,
just the last few centuries. Let's look over millions, billions of years. How big is this thing? So Journey Through Time is kind of my attempt to look at the biggest scale possible. So it's essentially the story of all things prehistoric. So it
mm,
starts off with the Big Bang, and then it talks about how planets and stars form. And then it comes into the Earth, one of the planets, and then it has the origin of life. And then we talk about the different living groups and some of the major events like a snowball Earth. And then it ends up with, the civilization of humans and everything in between.
wow. I mean, that's the scope is is absolutely vast. How do you manage to do it in a semester? Is it a semester long
It's
course?
a semester course, yes.
I mean, that's like studying everything in 4 months. So walk us through what that experience is like. What do you enjoy teaching about it? What do students enjoy about it?
I hope students enjoy it. The feedback I get from students says that they do. They do seem to enjoy it pretty well. They like that it's cohesive. They like that it is story-like, and they like that
Mm,
it's interdisciplinary. A lot of non-science majors are a little bit nervous about science, and for them to go really deeply into, say, molecular biology or organic chemistry or something like that would be pretty daunting. They would find it
mm,
daunting. So Journey Through Time is more of a dabbling course. We get into the Big Bang and we talk about what a red shift is and how to
mm,
interpret the data, but we don't get super deep into it. We never talk about quantum mechanics. We never talk about, say, dark energy beyond the fact that it exists. We don't go into the
right.
details of it. So I
Yeah.
think students find that it's doable. It feels doable from their perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you consider beautiful about this course or your experience of teaching it?
Oh, so many ways, so many ways. I personally love being able to connect the present to the prehistoric past. So,
Mm,
to give one example, right now there's so much of an emphasis on polarization that people are drawn in different, say, you could be talking about politics, but you could also talk about sororities or about your local community, anything where there's some sort of a groupishness. Looking prehistorically, we lived in groups. We were a social organism. We had our hunter-gatherer band, and there was very much an in-group loyalty and an out-group distrust. And so it's neat to me to be able to connect what's going on in the present to how we were shaped, how natural selection shaped us over millions of years.
Yeah. That's certainly that kind of connection across levels is an aesthetic experience. So typically a lot of people say what they find beautiful about teaching is to see the light bulb go on in a student's eyes or something like that. And I wonder if you've encountered in your teaching ways in which students are making the kinds of connections that you want them to make, or making perhaps unexpected connections.
Yeah, I think so. I'd love to let the students speak for themselves. They each have their own experience. Some of the specific times that I've seen it, once when we were looking at the evolution of monogamy, social monogamy, that typically it's one man and one woman. If you look historically, there's pretty strong evidence that was a consequence of our brains getting so big. Once you have a big brain, but you have a limited size birth canal, then most of our development has to take place out of the womb, which means childhood is extended, which means that there's more emphasis there, that parents need more resources to raise the children, which means there's more of an emphasis on not just the mother helping, but also the father. So that distinguished our lineage from the ape lineages, which remained polygynous, which is one male with multiple females. So it's the big brain that led to natural selection favoring fathers who are willing to commit to the mother and commit to his children. And so it's fascinating. I enjoyed watching students think about that, because it seems like their eyes are always open up. Once they make all those connections, they're like, oh, that kind of makes sense. So that's neat. And it's also interesting to see them wrestle with some of the ethics associated with that, because there's plenty of sexual soap operas that take place in college campuses. And a lot of students are struggling with that sort of stuff. And so for them to think about what they're going through personally and connect it to the evolution of monogamy and how fathers especially would have transitioned from being not committed to one female to being committed to one female, and trying to juxtapose that with their own personal experiences. I can see that a lot of students, their eyes are really clicking a lot for that.
Talk about other teaching you've done that you find fascinating, exciting. What other aspects of your teaching or other courses really bring you to life?
Sure. So I was hired as a biologist, but I was hired mostly to take science out to people who are not scientists. And so I've kind of got the reputation for being somebody who can connect science to any other discipline. And being at a place like Elon University that values teaching and that values interdisciplinarity has been a beautiful thing for me. So I've been able to teach this Journey Through Time course. I also get to teach another interdisciplinary science called Science Without Borders, which covers the biggest ideas of all of the sciences. I also get to teach interdisciplinary course that integrates science with other disciplines, that is looking at environmental sustainability. That's more of a capstone course. And then I've been able to team teach a course for students in all the arts and sciences, but team teach with a political scientist and an English professor and a psychologist. And that is just beautiful to think of how science, meaning like STEM science, natural science, integrates with social science, which also integrates with the arts and humanities, and see the connections, see the similarities in how we think, but also the differences, and think about what insights come from looking at the same things, but through a different lens. It's beautiful.
Wow. Could you walk us through that? Like, what does that look like practically when you have that many different disciplines in a course?
Right. Well, the focus of our course is to help students learn to appreciate all three branches of the arts and sciences. So to appreciate arts and humanities, but also to appreciate social science and to appreciate STEM. The second big focus of the course is to get them to learn how to ask research questions in any of those three branches. So we prod and push and pull our students until they get a chance to be creative in all those three disciplines and to learn what assumptions work in some disciplines, but not in others. So to give a concrete example, in STEM, we believe in an objective reality. If a tree falls down in a forest, it fell down. Humans, it didn't matter if a human heard it. That would be an arrogant assumption for us to make. It's the tree, right? That's the focal point. But in the arts and humanities, then there's much more of an emphasis on subjective reality, that you and I might both observe a tree falling down, but I as a scientist would see one thing, you as a social scientist might see something different with the tree falling down, and a poet might see a third thing with the tree falling down, and all of us would be right, because reality is subjective and there's different pathways that all lead to truth. So that's more of an arts and humanities way to look at things. And I think it's beautiful to see how all of those different viewpoints can integrate.
Beauty at Work is brought to you by Templeton Religion Trust. If you enjoyed this clip, go check out the full episode. And please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps get the word out about the show. Thanks, and see you next time.